on to Cody Rhodes and Heyman. Get personal. Cody basically continuing his march to WrestleMania. Basically coming out and saying it's going to be an honor to be at WrestleMania, facing Roman Reigns, and then talking about how Sami has interjected himself into the storyline, and whatever the case may be, he's still going to go to WrestleMania and win the titles, right? Paul Heyman comes out, and they basically have a back and forth, basically telling each other's history, and Cody Rhodes gets personal with in terms of a good way, right? Kind of saying, hey, you gave my father a second chance in this business that he probably thought was over, right? And especially being able to write and develop and be back in wrestling. Paul Heyman is probably the greatest salesman in wrestling ever, like playing that up and basically saying how what do you guys think about that, and just how those guys played off each other in a tremendous promos? I think that's what we've been talking about leading up to this, is like, how are the promos going to be? And this delivered 10 times fold.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we talked about it last week. Yeah, just imagine how the promos are going to be, and the first one was a gem between the two of them. I mean, it got deep. Like when Paul Heyman does his promos, he liked, and he's telling, and he's getting and it's personal. Like the way he enunciates, or the way he tells the story, he takes you on a ride. He takes you on a ride where like you're like visualizing everything that he's saying, and you're just with it the entire time. And then you got Cody over there. You know, obviously, he loves his dad so much. Anytime his father is mentioned, you can just see the facial expressions. You can see the tears and such. So the promo itself was powerful, and I'm glad that we're gonna get a lot more of these moving forward. But the one thing that I'm cautioning WWE and Triple H on, they have to be very careful how they're booking this feud along with Sami's feud. They have to be very careful that like Cody and Sami aren't like stepping on each other's like toes per se, because like I was reading somewhere that at the Rumble, merchandise wise, Cody's merchandise was the number one seller. So Cody makes big money for them, and he's still getting his babyface reactions. But they have to be careful that it's not at the expense of Sami Zayn, because Sami Zayn's good fortune came from a great story that was being told. Unlike Daniel Bryan's story, which was just stubbornness by Vince McMahon based upon the whole size and bullshit.
Yeah,
So Sami Zayn's is based upon actually a good story. So I'm just hoping that moving forward that they're careful to be sure that Sami Zayn and Cody are both strong. But other than that, like I said, the promo was a gem.
Yeah, just like Brian said, that promo had me captivated just hearing it. Like, and it's crazy how when they were going into it, you're like, let's pull the curtain back. Like, let's get real. Let's talk about like what we're not supposed to talk about. But, and like Brian said, like Heyman is such a good talker, and it's crazy that he comes from the previous era where like promos were just like so good. And I feel like this era, the promos is like people don't have that. People don't have that like can just like carry. Yeah, there's a few like you got your Seth Rollins and Roman now, because he's like doing the character he's meant to do. Bray Wyatt, but like Paul Heyman is just so good, and like he can flip it. You can think he's being like he did in the promo. He was the natural heel. Like he's like I adore your father. I respect you. But I'm gonna flip this and it's gonna hurt you, and like you feel it. You're like you're gonna do this to me about my dead father right now, like. but that's also that's also what Cody needs right now to keep him hot, because Sami's so hot right now. And that promo is what's keeping the feud burning for people wanting to see Roman and Cody. So that promo was very important, because it's like you got all this bloodline Sami stuff going on. It's like you can't keep forgetting about the main event, and this is why you can't forget about the main event. So,
And again, kudos to WWE for putting Heyman in that spot, right? It wasn't anybody else. It wasn't the bloodline. It was Heyman, right? So we talked about that, like that family dynamic and that I didn't even think of the family dynamic between Dusty and Heyman. Like,
I didn't even
you know
know
what I
about
mean?
it. I
So
didn't even know nothing about it. I didn't
yeah,
even
so
think
to
they were in
see
that same era at all.
to see that play out on air, and it's just like, yo, again, another element of this story that's keeping it going. And I feel like what Brian was saying, not to kind of cross these storylines a little bit, but it's like they kind of have to, right? In terms of Sammy's going to be the guy that's the thorn in the bloodline side, not only just Roman and stuff like that, but I think overall, right? So at some point, the numbers game is going to have to get to Cody, right? That's what I'm thinking about. And Sammy and KO are obviously going to help him. So I think that's the way that they can kind of keep Cody in that line of being the top babyface, right? But it's going to be interesting to see how they go. But this promo here with Cody, and Cody's kind of finding himself on the mic and stuff like that, especially in WWE, getting better as they go. But to put Heyman in that position and have it end where Cody's basically saying, I'm going to take these belts, everybody's making this thing personal, and I'm going to personally take those belts personally at WrestleMania. It's like, this is getting juicier by the minute. Like, it's getting better. Like, it's going to get heated. And we talked about it. Like, these promos are only going to get better, especially when Roman's added into it and Roman's actually able to talk about Cody, get into that. And of course, at some point, we're going to see Cody first, the bloodline, right? He's going to have to take on some of these guys like Sokola is going to be the muscle. He's going to have to fight him. And I'm especially leading up to WrestleMania. But it's going to be interesting to see how this goes, man. It's going to be interesting to see how this goes. WWE has two hot storylines in these, and I think they hit 2 check marks on the road to WrestleMania with the Bloodline promo, Sammy and Roman in the first part, and then to come back on Raw and have Heyman and Cody have this segment where it's like everything's emotional, everything's tied to family, and everyone's selling, right? Like, Paul Heyman is, again, I said it before, the greatest salesman in wrestling, right? On the mic for decades. And to see him just produce that and say, hey, and as Lewis says, being able to flip it on a dime, like, he was so sincere talking about Dusty Rhodes and then just flipped it like, well, that's not going to be for you. Like, your family all failed. Like, like, you know what I mean? Your whole family failed and basically stuff like that. And to really get Cody to be pissed off, like, that was the whole thing. And that, like, everyone loves Dusty Rhodes. Like, if you love wrestling, like, you know about Dusty, you hear people talk about him. So that's going to be a touching point all the way through this. Like, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, but it's crazy how legit the Rhodes family, like, each one was. And I know we talked about it last time, just like how Dusty was hot, and then you got the whole polka dot thing. You got Gold Dust, the whole thing, and then you had Cody coming in hot, and then boom, they turn him to Stardust. It's like, it like writes itself how like their whole family is just like straight up underdog, and then you got this dominant bloodline right now, and it's like,
that's crazy to think about. Like, their whole family literally flipped everything that was given to them, and made the most of it, and became top stars because of it. Like, I will put Goldust in that category because when you first saw the Goldust character, you were kind of taken aback by it. But now,
like, my mom didn't like that on TV. Like, watching wrestling, my mom was like, "Who is this guy? Like, this is too much for like children and stuff like that." Like, Goldust was groundbreaking in that self, like, being that type of character on TV at that time.
Yeah.
But people forget about Dustin Rhodes in WCW and how he was a top hand in WCW. Never really got that just doing WCW, similar to Dusty, even though Dusty was the booker and got the title match against Flair at Starrcade. But Dustin was a top guy in WCW in terms of being that guy that was wrestling and being consistent and one of the best hands in wrestling. And then to just see him go to WWF and be Goldust and never really get his just due there, it's like, wow, like, everything is just falling into place. And now, and it's funny because, again, we talked about Cody's pathway and stuff like that. Like, he had to reinvent himself to come back, to be accepted, to be put in this position, right? Like, to be this close now and to have that title match and have this history there with Heyman telling that history as well. Is great.
For him, it's going to be all like family redemption, and that's what's playing so well into it. Like, you got this dominant, legit family that's been running the WWE for like the past 2 years, and now you got the Southern family that's like the biggest underdog ever. And like, are they actually going to come in and like finally get their just due and everything? You know?
Hopefully WWE doesn't pull the rug from underneath us.
There's
always a chance, right?
We can have hope. We can have hope now. I mean, with the way things are now, but then creative, we can have that hope.
I have hope in Triple H. I have hope in Triple H.
If Vince is there, I'm assuming Cody's losing in like 2 minutes at WrestleMania.
No, they're gonna drag it. Clean. Like they did Booker T at WrestleMania 19. Clean.
Let's not get into that tonight.
Clean. Nah, but
I think random off topic. It's funny how NXT. I don't know. I feel like when NXT was really hot, it was just like they settled their like main title matches and like people finish clean. It wasn't, and I'm like, why is it like all this stuff you have the great build up and then like it's settled in the match, but then you got the main roster. Oh, there's a DQ. Oh, there was somebody here. There's somebody distraction. Or they did this, and I'm like, bro, can you just give us like a clean finish? Like, is that so hard to just give somebody like give them a long match and just like clean finish? No, nobody has to come out and
like Ruth Pritchard said, it's all part of a grand story, man.
Sometimes it's just too much. Just give me a clean finish. Just give me a clean
bullshit, man. But now, like again, like what Lewis said, like NXT finished their matches clean. Like there was a definitive winner. Like, and they moved on. Like they moved on. Good. Like, all right, we got a new challenge. You guys had your blood feud. Moving on. WWE, like nothing pissed me off more than like AJ Styles versus Nakamura. Nakamura low blowing him all the time, getting disqualified. I'm like, why does it have to be that? It does not have to be that.
That match should have been a banger.
We do not have to waste these two great wrestlers like this. We do not have to do that. There's so many times where they end in DQ or do a shabby finish, and I'm fine with a shabby finish if it's done correctly. And a lot of the times they don't.
It'll prolong it, or even move the story. But it's like. I didn't know Nakamura. I didn't know anything about New Japan before Nakamura, and dude, his intro, his music when he did the NXT like pay-per-views, I'm like, bro, this man is fire. I'm like, this man is so fire. He has everything. He doesn't even really speak English, and that's fine. But he comes up to the main roster, and I'm like.
And they just did him. He did win the Rumble.
You don't speak English, you're not going to do well.
Like he did win the Rumble, so he had that rub. And I'm like, okay, they're actually going to go somewhere with this guy and do something.
And nope, they can't do it.
then he had he went up against Jinder Mahal. I'm like, okay, they're redoing this, and he's going to get his chance to be champion and get his run. And then they do this whole racist type thing, and then they have him lose. I'm like,
yes.
And I'm not gonna lie, I liked Jinder Mahal's whole appearance, his gimmick, him being like, I'm like, this guy his size reminded me of Razor Ramon. I'm like, this guy's jacked. Hopefully he gets, but he just never got better in the ring. Like he was just average, and I'm like,
and his promos were never good. I don't know. His promos to me, it was the same. It was the same character every time. Like
you Americans hate me.
You angry? Yeah, okay. You angry? Okay, give me another emotion.
Funny? Like you know what's funny about Jinder? Because like in interviews, whenever he talks about the championship reign, he'll always say that like people say the push was given to me. Like, no, I created the push. I got myself in good shape and bettered my character.
He did.
It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that the company going into the Indian market had a lot to do with it. Yes. But hey, I'm just saying.
Why do you think Mansoor wrestles every time they go to fucking Saudi Arabia? I wonder why.
Yeah,
mind you,
it's like the Great Khali wasn't available. We needed somebody.
His knees are a little shaky. We can't do this anymore.
Yeah, but at least Khali is a god in India, so it made sense. Like he's a god out there. So it's like.
That incredible. Like every single time they called the Great Khali to like do a feud with like the Undertaker or John Cena or just be big, I'm like,
this man could not move.
Like,
so like 3 steps. He was just like, match over.
That crap's funny. But again, we just want a clean finish in wrestling. That's all. And especially to a high profile match in a feud like that, we just want a clean finish. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.